Please read it. You solemnly swear all the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God.
I do.
Please be seated, sir. And sir, would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Donald Yockey, Y-O-C-K-E-Y,
And how were you employed?
for the City of West Dallas Police Department.
And how long have you been so employed?
19 years.
And what rank have you attained?
I'm a lieutenant.
And were you so employed on April 4th, 1988?
Yes, I was.
And did you have occasion on that date to come in contact with the person you now know as Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes, I did.
Can you identify him by where he's seated in the courtroom and what he's wearing?
We'll stipulate.
Very well.
Okay. What were the circumstances of that meeting?
Our department had received a complaint from Mr. Flowers that he had been robbed while he was at Mr. Dahmer's house.
And how did you know it was Mr. Dahmer's house?
Mr. Flowers had taken another officer there the night before and pointed out the house.
And how would Mr. Dahmer have learned about this fact?
At that time, he wasn't home, and a referral notice was left at his house telling him that we wanted to talk to him.
And did he arrive at the West Dallas Police Department?
Yes, he did.
And when he came there, did you place him in custody?
No, we did not.
What did you do?
We talked to him about the complaint that Mr. Flowers had made.
And what did Mr. Dahmer tell you?
He basically admitted to everything that Mr. Flowers had said, except the part about taking his money and his chain, gold chain.
Did he admit to drugging Mr. Flowers?
No, he denied doing that.
Well, why don't you tell me as closely as you can exactly what Mr. Dahmer said?
He had stated that...
Do you need to refer to your notes?
Yes, if I may.
Okay. Do you have an objection?
Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
He had stated that he had met Mr. Flowers at a bar on Saturday night, early Sunday morning. And he saw that this party was having trouble getting his car started, so Jeff said that he invited him to his house. Once they got to the house, he started drinking, mentioned Bailey's Irish Cream and some coffee. Eventually, they were drinking Bailey's Irish Cream straight out of the bottle. They both finally fell asleep. Mr. Dahmer stated that they were both very drunk. Mr. Dahmer stated that he woke up on Sunday morning around 9 a.m. and he wanted to get Mr. Flowers out of the house before his grandmother woke up. He didn't want to upset his grandmother. He stated that Mr. Flowers could barely stand, and he looked in Mr. Flowers' wallet and he saw that...
When was it that Mr. Flowers could barely stand? When during his discussion did he say that took place? Would that have been the morning afterwards?
That was the morning at 9 a.m., yes.
Okay.
That Mr. Flowers was still pretty drunk.
Okay, what happened then?
He said that he only saw $20 bills in Mr. Flowers' wallet, and he knew he wanted to take Mr. Flowers to the bus, and he knew the bus driver would not change a 20, so Mr. Dahmer gave him $1, walked him to the bus stop on 57th and Lincoln, and waited with him for the bus to come and made sure he got on the bus. And that is the last time he saw him.
And did he continue that the reason he walked him to the bus stop was to make sure he got on the bus because he was so drunk he wasn't sure he'd be able to?
Correct.
Was Mr. Dahmer at all hesitant when he told you this story?
Not at all.
Did you believe him?
Yes, I did.
At any time when you were talking with him, did he give incoherent answers to your questions?
No,
Did he give irrational answers to your questions?
no, he did not.
Did you believe he was the victim of delusional thinking?
No,
Did you ever think he was hearing voices?
no,
Did you ever believe he was having hallucinations?
no.
About how long do you think you talked with him?
20 minutes to 30 minutes, no more.
During your 19 years of being a police officer, detective, and now lieutenant, have you had the occasion to observe folks who you believe were mentally ill?
Yes,
Have you had occasion to take people to Milwaukee County Mental Health or some other hospital because you believe they were suffering from mental illness
yes,
and have them committed there?
yes.
Approximately how many times?
I'd have to say several dozen times.
Okay. Based on those experiences and your observations of Mr. Dahmer on April 4th, 1988, did you believe he was suffering from any mental illness?
And I'm going to object to the form of the question. It has to be answered pursuant to Tuesday, and that's not appropriate. But no finding that anybody can make a diagnosis of mental illness.
I'm not asking for diagnosis, Your Honor.
My objection is noted.
No, let me just a minute. Let me have the question written down.
Question, based on your experience in your observation of Mr. Dahmer on April 4th, 1988, do you believe he was suffering from any mental illness?
Court's going to sustain the objection, ask counsel to rephrase the question.
Just briefly, Your Honor, 2 pages before, I believe the question that I asked was found acceptable by the court.
Well,
I have the question. Based on your years of experience, what impression was made on your mind by the conduct, actions, manner, expressions, and conversations that you observed of this defendant?
I felt there was no problem with him. I felt he was normal.
Now, Lieutenant Yockey, on that date, Jeffrey Dahmer gave his address as 2357 South 57th Street in West Dallas. Is that correct?
Yes,
How far is the Mai Kai Lounge from that? Roughly.
within 2 or 3 blocks.
Okay. How far is 55th and Lincoln from that?
3 or 4 blocks.
Is it less than 3 or 4 blocks?
I would say it's closer to 3 blocks from there.
And the Mai Kai Lounge?
I believe the Mai Kai is on 56th. I'm not sure.
Okay.
56th and Lincoln, right on the corner.
Okay. What 100 block would Lincoln be, South Lincoln?
That starts at 2300.
Okay. No further questions?
Lieutenant, part of the official records of your department, somebody from the transport company was contacted to find out who the name of a driver was that might have had the route in West Dallas toward County General Hospital. And there was going to be somebody getting back to the department to see how it was that Mr. Flowers got from the Dahmer residence to Milwaukee County Hospital, right?
Correct.
Action calls for hearsay.
well, I don't think that called for hearsay. Objections overruled.
Right?
That's correct.
Were you ever successful in finding out how it was Mr. Flowers got from the Dahmer residence to the hospital?
No, we were not.
But you attempted to.
Yes.
Did you ask Mr. Dahmer how it was that Mr. Flowers got from wherever he was to the Milwaukee County Hospital?
No, I never asked him that.
Did he tell you that he put him on a bus, though?
Yes,
Did you ask him where he was planning, he thought Flowers was planning on going when he put him on the bus?
no, I never asked him that.
Mr. Flowers has no independent recollection of how it was that he got to the hospital?
That's correct.
Your office kept in touch with Mr. Flowers and gave him all of the updates he had to have in order to make him aware of what your investigation was showing?
Correct. We were basically contacting Mr. Flowers. We needed his medical records at the time.
You got his medical records.
Eventually, yes.
You told him what his records reflected, correct?
Yes,
And they were minimal detective levels of whatever.
correct.
What were the minimum detectable levels of whatever? What was
Your
it?
Honor, this is beyond the scope of this witness's ability to answer. It calls for medical testimony. There's a right way to get this in, but it's not through this witness.
Okay.
Counsel,
Your objection is that it called for expert testimony? Is that what you're saying?
He's asking this witness to talk about what the doctor's findings were, and I don't think this is the witness to do it.
Okay, then your objection is that it calls for hearsay.
Yes.
Okay, let me have the question.
Question, what was the minimum detectable of whatever? What was it?
I don't think I understand that. Does anybody else?
well, he's reading his reports. Counsel asked if he could read his reports. I said he could read his reports. I'm going right from his reports. 4/16/88. This lieutenant, I think they're your reports, aren't they, Lieutenant?
Yes, I typed that on 4/16/88.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he show me where that language appears in the report? That might help me as far as
Sure.
ruling on.
Show it to the judge.
Well, the part of whatever doesn't appear there, but
You're looking at 4/16/88.
I'm that where the detective has directed my attention. Just let me read that entry. Well, question here is what's the matter asserted? If we're trying to prove the truth of what those of some medical tests, this is not the way to do it. On the other hand, if we're trying to explain what the West Dallas Police Department subsequently did or did not do, then I think it's perfectly appropriate.
That's what I'm doing it for.
If it's for the latter purpose, Mr. Boyle, the objections overrules.
Tell us what you meant when you put down, quote, minimal detectable level, quit quote, was found, Lieutenant.
that I took off of the medical report. That's exactly what it said on the medical report.
Well, level of what?
Of what they tested for, I'd have to refer to the medical report.
As a result of what you found from reading that medical report, you contacted Mr. Flowers
That's correct.
and you told him what?
That I told him where our investigation was going, and because of his medical report, there wasn't much we could do at this time. And he stated that he understood and would contact his own attorney to see if anything else could be done.
Did you ever hear from him again?
No, we did not.
Okay. Is there any reason based upon anything you knew at that time that caused you to talk to Mr. Dahmer again?
No, there wasn't.
That's all. Thanks. Oh, by the way, in the course of your investigation, did you talk to his grandmother?
I did not talk to his grandmother.
Did anybody in your department?
I don't believe so.
That's all. Thank you.
The further direct examination of this witness? Okay, give me a step down. Thank you.
Detective Shaefer, Lieutenant Detective.
Please. Comments for all testimony you're about to give this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, they do.
Please be seated, sir. State your name, spelling your last name, please.
Scott Shaefer, SCHAEFER.
Are you employed as a city of Milwaukee police officer?
Yes, I am.
And what rank do you have?
Currently a lieutenant of detectives
How long have you been employed by the Milwaukee Police Department?
since 1974.
Did there come a time on September 27, 1988, that you were at work in the Milwaukee Police Department headquarters?
Yes,
Where is that building?
749 West 8th Street, City of Milwaukee.
Did there come a time that you were aware that an investigation was underway in connection with a sexual assault on a 13-year-old Laotian young man?
Yes, I did.
He is a minor, and for reasons of protection of his name, he has been referred to in these proceedings as SS. Would you continue to refer to him? The jury is familiar with his full name.
Yes.
What information did you receive, basically, that caused you to become involved in the investigation?
At approximately 12:20 a.m. on September 27th, 1988, officers Robert Enters and Gary Temp brought SS into the sexual assault unit of the Milwaukee Police Department, where I interviewed SS. The young man informed me that he had been walking on the street and a man had offered him some money to pose for some photos. He agreed and accompanied the man to his apartment. SS stated that while in the apartment, the man made a mixture of some coffee and a cream type liquid which tasted like chocolate, and that he drank some of that liquid. Stated that he posed for some photos for the man, and that the man wanted him to lower his underwear lower during the photos, and the man took his hand and lowered SS's underwear, and at that time, SS's penis came out of his underwear, and the man grabbed onto SS's penis, saying that the pose would be sexier that way. He stated that he took his penis out of the man's hand and put it back in his underwear, and that the man then took another photo.
And did he tell you then there came a time that he left the premises?
Yes, he did. He stated that he left the man's apartment and that upon leaving, he felt fuzzy like a drunk man, he stated. And he subsequently went to Mount Sinai Samaritan Hospital, where he was treated for an overdose.
And had officers gone out to the home and then with him gone to the apartment building where this took place and identified the particular apartment with his assistants?
That is correct.
And those uniformed officers from the manager had secured an individual's name and the location of his employment. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you had information that that man was Jeffrey Dahmer, that he was employed at a near West Side chocolate factory, and that he was a third shift worker. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And armed with that information, did you leave the Vice Squad offices and go to that West Side chocolate factory?
Yes, but prior to leaving, I showed SS a number of photographs, including the person who had been identified by the apartment manager, and SS positively identified Jeffrey Dahmer as the person who had taken him to his apartment and taken these photos.
This is what you refer to in police work as a photo array, is that correct?
Yes.
And you had Mr. Dahmer's picture on file from an earlier case where he had indecently exposed himself.
That is correct.
Did you then go to that West Side chocolate factory with the officers?
Yes, I did.
Did there come a time that Mr. Dahmer was brought to you by employees at the factory?
Yes,
And what, if anything, transpired when did you recognize him from the pictures you had already shown the Laotian boy?
yes, I did.
And what, if anything, any conversation occurred between you and Mr. Dahmer at that point?
At that point, I asked him if he was Jeffrey Dahmer. He stated yes, and at that time, I placed him under arrest.
And do you see Jeffrey Dahmer in court right now, the man you arrested that night?
Yes, I do.
And that was the early morning hours of September 27, 1988. Is that correct?
Approximately 2:10 a.m., I believe, yes.
What, if anything, did he do when you told him that he was under arrest? Did he do or say?
Well, he was placed into handcuffs and taken outside of his place of employment. At that time, a conveyance wagon was called for, and he became very nervous. He was upset that he was arrested at work. He asked me why I came to his place of employment. He was going to lose his job. He asked me if I had informed people at his place of employment why he was being arrested. We had a small conversation outside of what the accusations were. He knew why he was being arrested. He was very concerned as to his employer not knowing why he had been taken into custody.
After that, did the wagon arrive the wagon officers take him into custody?
Yes.
And where did you go from there?
I went back to my office. The wagon conveyors took Mr. Dahmer to the lockup facility, the city jail, and booked him, and thereafter brought him down to my office.
And this is your office in the Vice Squad, is that true?
That is correct.
And this was a sexual assault case because the lad was 13 years of age.
Yes.
Did you have conversation with Mr. Dahmer at that time?
Yes, I did.
Did you explain his constitutional rights to him?
Yes, I did.
Did he indicate whether or not he understood them?
He stated he fully understood and was willing to talk with me without an attorney present.
Can you tell us what was said then by you and by him in the conversation that followed?
Well, we had a question and answer type conversation. I again reiterated the accusations made by the young boy, and Mr. Dahmer gave me responses to the questions.
You have those thereafter, or shortly thereafter, you wrote up the basic elements of that conversation, did you not?
Later that morning, yes.
Do you have a copy of that write-up with you now?
Yes, I do.
Would you read that write-up to the jury?
States, regarding the offense, Dahmer states that he offered the Oriental victim $50 to pose for some pictures. He has no idea how old the victim is because, quote, "it's so hard to tell," end of quote. At no time did he ask how old he was or how far he was in school. Does not recall the victim telling him he was a freshman. That's in quote, freshman. He went with the victim to his apartment, that being Dahmer's apartment. Once there, he took 2 photos of the victim, but the photos were not sexually explicit. He and the victim were drinking out of the same cup while they were in the apartment. He, meaning Dahmer, had put coffee and Bailey's Irish cream into the cup. The cup is the same cup which he always uses to drink coffee from. He also places about 4 of his prescribed medication in with the coffee. He does not wash the coffee cup because he is generally the only person to drink from the cup. When he shared the coffee mixed with the Baileys with the victim, he did not add any of his pills. States that in no way did he intentionally drug the victim. If the victim had any of the drug in his system, it was because of previous use of the cup and not washing the cup. He denies ever touching the victim's penis, even while having the victim pose for the photographs. Denies kissing the victim's stomach. Questions how the victim could be so coherent if the victim was supposedly drugged. He was fine when he left the apartment. Gave the boy $50, and he had the $50 when he left the apartment. And then it's signed Jeffrey Dahmer, dated 9/27/88, 4:55 a.m. And that was signed after I read this verbatim to Mr. Dahmer with him reading along.
Thereafter, did you undertake to secure his consent to return to his apartment and secure items of evidence?
That would have been prior to the written statement. I had talked to him, but had not taken a written statement.
When you identify whether it was marked as state exhibit number 1 or 61, can you tell us what that is?
Exhibit number 61 is a typewritten form which I typed up on September 27th, 1988, after asking Mr. Dahmer for consent to search his apartment for the items which would be needed for evidentiary value in this case.
Did he sign that consent?
Yes, he did.
Is the hour entered, the date time that it was signed, the consent was signed or prepared at least?
Yes, directly under Mr. Dahmer's signature is typed in September 27th, 1988, 3:05 a.m.
How long had you talked to Mr. Dahmer after you returned to the police administration building and he was brought into your vice squad offices? For how long did that conversation take place?
Approximately 20 minutes.
Was it at that time then did you go out to follow up on the consent?
Yes, after he had signed the consent form.
Do you recall if you secured a key from him or from the manager at some point?
Mr. Dahmer accompanied us. He supplied the key and went with us to the apartment.
And when you, where was that apartment building?
It was located at 808 North 24th Street, apartment number 204.
And he accompanied you then into the apartment, particular apartment when you went there?
Yes, he did.
And did you, or who was with you? The same team of officers, if you recollect?
Officers Enters and Temp, who had initiated the investigation, along with my supervisor at that time, who was Lieutenant Lawrence Gottiger.
And did you undertake while at the apartment to search for certain items to which he had consented for a search to be conducted?
It wasn't a search per se. Mr. Dahmer told us where these items would be found
Could you
in the apartment.
read to the jury the particular items for which you were looking?
Number one item would be 2 photographs of one SS, the victim in this offense. Item number 2 would be 1 cup, brown in color, which was the cup which SS stated they had drank the coffee and Irish cream mixture from. Number 3 was 1 bottle of Bailey's Irish cream. Number 4, prescription drugs. And number 5, 1 Polaroid camera.
Did you thereafter return to did you also pick up some other drugs while you were there?
Yes, some prescription drugs were confiscated.
Did you thereafter return to the building, the police administration building, with those items and cause inventory forms to be prepared by yourself and file those items with the property room at the Milwaukee Police Department?
Yes, I did.
Do you have those inventory, a copy of those inventory forms with you at the stand?
Yes, I do.
If it'll save any time, I'll stipulate all of it. The council move it all in evidence without any objection. That the items they're mentioning that they have there were in fact taken pursuant to that consensual search.
Do you recognize the boxes and what's in there? Have you had a chance to examine it?
Yes, I recognize it.
And what is in there?
Item number 2 on inventory number 1225725. This is a Polaroid Spectra camera, which was confiscated on the couch of Mr. Dahmer's living room.
And what is the bottle of liquor that to your left? What item is that?
This would be the same inventory number. Item number 3, it's a bottle of Dunphy's cream liqueur, This was recovered on the top of the refrigerator in Mr. Dahmer's kitchen.
And what is the exhibit number on the camera box and the liquor bottle that we've marked for the purposes of this proceeding?
The camera is listed on State's Exhibit number 42. The Irish cream is listed on State's Exhibit number 43.
Examine state 44 and 45. Compare that to the inventory numbers, and can you identify to the jury what are in those two bags?
State's Exhibit number 44 is a paper bag, which is the same inventory previously referred to. Item number 5, which would be 1 brown cup. State's Exhibit number 45 is a paper bag. Contained therein is another brown cup. These were recovered on the kitchen counter in Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment.
You examine what is marked inventory number 1225725 item number 6. That inventory appears to have been sealed initially by you and then reopened by someone else. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And can you identify to the jury at least what the bag contained when you packaged it initially?
Okay, State's Exhibit number 46, when it was initially packaged, was the same inventory number, item number 6, and this contained numerous male-oriented nude-type magazines. These were recovered in a dresser drawer in Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment.
After you examine what's been marked in state inventory number 41, if you compare it to the inventory number on your report, can you identify to the jury what is contained in state's exhibit number 41?
State's Exhibit number 41 is a clear plastic baggie, contains 2 photos of the victim SS, which were taken by Mr. Dahmer. And these were recovered in the same dresser drawer as item number 6, being the male magazines.
You had met the young Laotian boy, is that correct?
That is correct. I spoke with him for about 35 minutes prior to...
That last exhibit, the picture, is that in fact 2 pictures?
Yes, it is.
And you put it in a cellophane bag with one picture facing outside on one direction and the other back-to-back facing the other way, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you recognize from your contact with the Laotian boy earlier in the early morning hours of September 27, 1988, did you recognize who was depicted in those 2 pictures?
Yes, that was SS.
The 13-year-old Laotian boy?
Correct.
We're not going to identify a particular drug or drugs, but you also see certain particular prescription drugs at the scene, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you had reason to believe that the young man from the hospitalization had reason to believe that he had ingested a drug that would cause him to pass out, is that true?
Yes, I had the pharmaceutical name for the active ingredient in that drug, yes.
And did you undertake then to recover certain prescription pills from Mr. Dahmer's apartment?
Yes, I did.
And how did you inventory and package those in that package?
These were confiscated by me. They were packaged by police officer Diane Kotowitz, who was the narcotic officer in the office at that time.
And you listed those drugs on your inventory form, is that correct?
That is correct.
Was that a separate inventory you prepared for the drugs?
Yes, that inventory was prepared by Officer Kotowitz.
Let's mark that inventory, because we used the 2 inventories in fact. State exhibit number 63, a copy of the Milwaukee Police Department inventory listing the things to which you testified other than the prescription drug.
That is correct.
And state exhibit number 64 lists the prescription drugs that were recovered. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You file those in separate places. Is that correct? Are drugs kept separately generally?
Yes, always.
Inventory system.
Always.
And did you Did Mr. Dahmer identify those particular drugs as the drugs which he indicated had been inadvertently been consumed by the boy?
I don't recall if he stated those were the drugs or not. I recognize them.
From the report you had received from the hospital, from your experience as a vice squad officer, you recognize those particular pills as such as would be involved in the incident?
That's correct.
Did there come a time that you spoke again with Mr. Dahmer, either as you were there at the apartment or the next day in another office?
Well, I spoke with him continuously from the time he was arrested in my office, at his apartment briefly, and then when we went back to the vice squad, I spoke with him for a short period, and that is when I wrote the written statement that he read and signed.
Right. And did you have any further discussions with him that you haven't talked to other than later on that morning?
Not that evening. Later on that morning, I did, yes.
Was that in the district attorney's office?
Correct.
And you were over there to prepare certain charges to be brought against the defendant, Mr. Dahmer, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of that complaint that you initially caused to be filed then?
Yes, I do.
We have that document. I mean, the actual district attorney's complaint. We have that?
Yes, I do. You have a copy of it.
You then, put in your papers, you then went to the district attorney's office to pursue a particular charge or charges against the defendant, Mr. Dahmer, in connection with the incident. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And from your discussion with the young lad, you appreciated that it occurred on September 26, 1988, although the arrest then followed on September 27, 1988.
That is correct.
Right? As part of the process, you appear before an assistant district attorney who reviews the case, determines what charges to be brought. Is that true?
That's correct.
And was the defendant with you at any time during that discussion or while the district attorney's office was reviewing the matter?
Yes, he was. After the initial conference with the district attorney, Mr. Dahmer was taken into the district attorney's office for a statement.
And were you present during that statement?
Yes, I was.
And was that a statement to an assistant district attorney?
Yes.
Did you make notes thereafter as to what was said in that meeting?
I filed an additional supplementary report as to any other information which was not consistent with his original statement. Yes, I did.
And have you a copy of that with you in the court?
Yes, I do.
Would you present to me? Would you identify that which was marked as State Exhibit 66?
State's Exhibit 66 is a copy of a Milwaukee Police Department PO 15A, which is a supplementary report on an investigation.
Was that report prepared by you?
Yes, it's in my handwriting.
And was it prepared subsequent to the appearance in the district attorney's office on September 27, 1988?
Yes, it was.
And would you read that to the jury?
On Tuesday, September 27th, 1988, at approximately 11 a.m., in the district attorney's office, Jeffrey Dahmer was advised of his constitutional rights. State said he understands and wishes to cooperate. Regarding the offense, Dahmer states that he intended on taking photos of the victim's penis, but he, quote, didn't want to press it, end of quote. When he was lowering the victim's underwear, the victim's penis came out, but he did not touch it. He admits that he wanted to have sexual contact with the victim, but didn't want to push it. He admits to kissing the victim's abdomen, saying that he made that, quote, contact, end of quote.
You added that because it seemed to be a supplement with his earlier statement that had been in the vice squad offices when you interviewed him shortly after his arrest. Is that correct?
Correct.
With respect to the formal complaint, did you sign that complaint? It's been marked as an exhibit already. What exhibit number is it?
That's State Exhibit number 65. Yes, I signed that complaint.
And that carries 2 charges, does it not?
Yes, it does.
What are those 2 charges?
Second-degree sexual assault and enticing a child for immoral purposes.
And by state law, the district attorney's office must place within that complaint the penalty for each count. Is that true?
Yes.
And does that complaint state such what the penalty is?
Yes, it does.
And what does it state for each count being the penalty?
Upon conviction of the charges listed in counts 1 and 2, Class C felonies, the maximum possible penalty is a fine of not more than $10,000 or imprisonment for not more than 10 years or both as to each count.
Are you aware that the defendant eventually pled guilty to both those counts?
Yes, I am.
Do you recall seeing the defendant after the appearance in the district attorney's office on September 27, 1988?
No.
Keeping in mind the contacts you had with him throughout those hours on September 27, 1988, did you notice any delusions from your contact with the defendant, that he was suffering from any delusions?
No, I did not.
Did he indicate he was suffering from any hallucinations?
No.
Was he incoherent in any way in your conversations with him?
No, he was very responsive.
Did he respond to your questions and clearly appear that he understood what you were asking of him?
Yes.
Were his responses rational?
Yes, they were.
Was he in any way unable to relate one thought to another?
No, not at all.
Do you observe him having anything like racing thoughts?
No.
Did he appear to you to be in any type of a stupor at any time?
No, he did not.
Did he appear out of touch with reality in any way?
No.
From your knowledge gained from the hours you were with him on September 27, 1988, from the observations you made at that time, from the actions you saw, his conversations and manner and appearances as you saw him that day, did you form any opinion as to whether or not he was sane or insane?
Well, I'm going to object to the form of that question. It's an inappropriate way to ask it. We've been through this.
No. Okay, I think there's a better way to ask it, and the court is going to ask Mr. McCann to rephrase the question.
Did you make what observations did you make of him? What was your conclusion as to whether or not he appeared normal to you?
Same objection in a specific way to ask.
Oh, I think that's close enough to the recommended form.
He appeared normal. He was quiet. He didn't volunteer any information or conversation, but he was responsive to questions. And
if it please the court, I would ask that while I mark the officer's initial interview, that the exhibits, I would move into evidence all the exhibits and request that the 2 pictures be published to the jury.
Okay, let's one step at a time. Any objection to receiving the exhibits and evidence, Mr. Boyle?
No objection to receiving anything in evidence.
Received.
Mark, I do have an objection to having a picture published. It's immaterial and irrelevant to the matter before this court.
Oh, I haven't asked for argument. You have an objection. Let me look at the photographs.
It's the publishing of the 2 pictures.
Well, my inclination is to sustain the objection. However, the state wants to be heard. I'd be glad to hear the state's argument. No.
Do I understand that they received the evidence?
They're received in the evidence, but they are not to be published, at least at this time.
You talked indeed read from the report of the documentation that was prepared that morning by you. Is that correct?
yes, I have.
You read the initial statements that he gave you in the early morning hours of September 27. The first statement, the statement before the district attorney's office. Is that true?
Yes.
And now that has now been marked as an exhibit, has it not?
Yes, it has.
And what is that exhibit?
State Exhibit number 67.
If it please the court, I would move that also into evidence, State Exhibit 67.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to do too many things at the same time here. What, is there any objection, Mr. Boyle?
Yes, sir.
Received.
That's all.
Is Donald Lieutenant Chief?
Yes, sir.
How long has that been the situation?
Since April of 1991.
So it's clear that when police officers are trying to do their job, one of the things they really want to do is accumulate evidence in the fastest, most expeditious way with the minimum amount of paperwork. And one of the ways of doing that is asking the defendant if you can do a search without having to get a search warrant.
Correct.
Helps you do your job. It keeps you from having to go apply to a court and go through all of that kind of rigmarole, correct?
Correct.
And it's helpful to you to get it done as quickly as possible.
Yes.
But so that it's absolutely clear, when you ask for that, and it's a limited request and a limited granting, you've got to do what has been approved, right? What has been approved by the defendant in the way of the consent. In other words, if he consents to you searching his car, you can't go to his house, right?
That's correct. It would be the same with a search warrant granted by the judge.
Sure. So what you really wanted to do was, you know from the youngster involved that there were certain things in order to put your case together. You wanted to go over there and get the items necessary to put the case together and make sure that the evidence supported the charge, right?
That is correct.
Right. And the defendant was cooperative in that regard.
Yes, he was. He voluntarily.
Volunteered. Not only that, you typed it up and had him sign it so there'd be no question later about somebody saying that it wasn't done the right way, correct?
That was for my own protection.
Sure it is. And the defendant, by the same token, in the final analysis, made admissions to you and corroborated what the youngster said about some of his conduct, right? Like the kissing of the stomach. He initially had denied that. He later admitted it, right?
He admitted it the next morning, yes.
Sure. When you went over to the house, was the defendant with you?
Yes, he was.
All right. You only were allowed to go in and get the things that he said that you asked for, that he said, okay, go get those things, right?
Correct.
And did you know that there was a skull of a person that he had killed in that apartment?
No.
Did he appear nervous at any time while he was standing there while you were going about the business of picking up the items that have now been marked and received in the evidence?
Yes.
All right. Did you know, or did you ask him the source of his nervousness?
No, under the circumstances, I think anyone would be nervous.
Sure. So you had no reason to believe that his nervousness was because he was concerned that you might unravel a skull, and if you had, there would have been an entirely different kind of investigation, right?
Correct.
All right. Just so it's clear, Lieutenant, it is my belief that you did exactly what the law allowed you to do, because that's all you could do is pick up those things that he gave you permission to pick up, correct?
Correct.
Thanks.
Well, the defendant appeared to be cooperative. He never told you that he had a skull there, did he?
No, he did not.
And with respect to his claim that it was inadvertent or by accident that the young man was drugged, to your knowledge, did he ever change that claim?
No, in my opinion, he was attempting to legitimize the situation.
Thank you.
Well, with all due respect, he wasn't legitimizing the situation when he admitted to touching a 13-year-old boy, was he?
He never admitted to touching his penis.
Well, no, but I mean, he certainly admitted to taking the boy up and taking pictures of him.
Correct.
He allowed you to pick up the pictures.
Yes.
Okay. That certainly was no question in your mind that he enticed a child into his apartment for immoral purposes when he told you that he brought him up there to take pictures of him in a semi-unclothed way. He was admitting that, wasn't he?
Correct. I was referring to the drug ingestion.
Oh, no. I understand. Okay, thanks.
The record is clear. Did he ever confess to you that he had touched the boy's penis?
No, he denied that.
Thanks.
We have to ask this question. Did he plead guilty to the charge?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so he may not have admitted to you, but he pled guilty to the charge.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Is that it? Okay. I guess you can step down now, sir.
You may need 5 minutes.
Great. Family swear that all testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated, sir. Then would you state your name, spelling your last name, please?
Gary Temp, T-E-M-P.
Are you a City of Milwaukee police officer?
Yes, sir, I am.
And for how long have you served in that role?
12 years, sir.
Were you so employed on September 26, 1988?
Yes, sir, I was.
Were you working in a patrol car in the second shift?
Yes, sir, I was.
And what hours is that?
That would have been from 3:30 p.m. till 11:30 p.m.
Your testimony will involve a juvenile. We have referred to that juvenile as SS in these proceedings. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Did there come a time that you were dispatched to the residence of SS?
Yes, sir, did.
And was that within your patrol district?
Yes, sir, it was.
And would you describe the area of your patrol district on September 26, 1988?
At that time, I was assigned to Squad 30, which at the time was bounded by North 16th Street to North 35th Street, the Valley up to State Street. That was the boundaries of the squad area.
You were dispatched to the residence of that particular juvenile SS, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
You had conversations with that juvenile, and then with him you went to an apartment building near 24th and Wells, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
You were undertaking to ascertain who it was that had induced him to come into an apartment to pose for pictures and had fondled him, is that correct?
That's correct,
And
sir.
from which apparently he had received some element that caused him to be in a drug condition.
That's correct, sir.
I'm drawing for the jury, understand I'm short-circuiting what that, they've already heard basic contents of that. You went to that apartment building with him, determined in which apartment that had transpired, talked with the manager of that apartment building, and secured the name of the resident of the particular apartment that the juvenile pointed out to you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
You then took the juvenile down to the police headquarters, the vice room, where he had some discussion with another officer. Is that correct?
Yes, with, at the time, Detective Shaefer.
Thereafter, did you go with Detective Shaefer, or at least meet Detective Shaefer at a near West Side chocolate factory?
Yes, sir, I did.
And was the purpose to arrest Mr. Dahmer?
Yes, it was.
And were you there when he was arrested?
Yes, I was.
After that arrest, he was taken down to the street and a wagon conveyed him to the police administration building. Is that true?
That's correct, sir.
Did you later come into contact, now that we're now after your shift hours, we're over into September 27, 1988. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Did you go with Lieutenant Shaefer, to the dwelling on North 24th Street that you had already ascertained was Jeffrey Dahmer's dwelling?
Yes, I did.
And do you see Jeffrey Dahmer in court right now?
Yes, I do.
All right. Was he present with you when you went to that dwelling with Shaefer and yourself?
Yes, he rode in the squad car with myself and my partner.
And your partner on that night was whom?
Robert Enters, E-N-T-E-R-S.
Were you present in the apartment when the search was conducted?
Yes, I was.
And certain items were recovered in that search or were identified by Mr. Dahmer and were recovered by the police department. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
And did you go take him back in your car back to the police administration building that morning?
Yes, I did.
Right. And did that conclude your contact with Mr. Dahmer on September 27th, 1988?
Other than once we arrived at the police department after Detective Shaefer questioned him, I walked him back up to the city jail on the 5th floor.
And for how many hours do you think it was that you had contact with Mr. Dahmer at that time?
Probably on that day I spent physically with him maybe an hour, hour and a half in that neighborhood.
Did there come a time that you saw him again, particularly on November 4, 1988?
Yes, sir, there did.
And under what circumstances was it that you came into contact with him on November 4, 1988?
Myself and Officer Enters were dispatched to North 22nd Street in West Wells to investigate a battery complaint.
And at what hour was that approximately?
It's approximately 5:40 p.m.
And that was again in your district? In
Yes,
your
that was
patrol district?
Yes, in the squad area.
All right. When you arrived at that, did you come into contact with Mr. Dahmer?
Yes, I did.
Where was he at that time?
At that location, there's an attorney's office, and he was sitting in the lobby of the attorney's office.
And what, if anything, did you tell him? First of all, did you notice something about his person?
I noticed that he was bleeding from wounds on the head, and I also recognized him from the incident on September 26th and September 27th.
In other words, the incident involving SS you appreciated this was the same man in whose arrest you had participated a month and a number of days earlier. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right. And what, if any, conversation did you have with Mr. Dahmer?
I asked him what had happened to him and called an ambulance for him because he was obviously in need of medical attention.
You could see him bleeding. Was he bleeding from the head?
Yes.
All right. And what did he tell you had happened?
Told me he was in the 2400 block of West Wells about 5 p.m. and somebody had beaten him up. He had no idea who, could give no description or anything like that.
Did he say whether he was on the street when that occurred or whether he was within a building?
Said that happened on the street.
And did you continue to talk with him as presumably the ambulance was coming?
Yes, I did.
And what, if anything, further did he say about it?
Well, I questioned that what had actually happened, and he became upset with me. And he said, what do you care what happened to me? You're just trying to incriminate me.
I'd like the answer right back there.
Answer what? Well, I questioned what had actually happened, and he became upset with me, and he said, what do you care what happened to me? You're just trying to incriminate me.
Did you continue to question him as to description of the individual, where he was when it happened, and questions of that sort?
I did, but it became a point where he was uncooperative and he really didn't want to answer my questions or didn't seem to want to talk to me. So
did he give you any consistent identification of the individual who had attacked him?
No, he couldn't do that.
But did he continue to say that it had occurred on the street?
Yes.
And did the ambulance arrive?
Yes, it did.
And did he then leave in the ambulance?
Yes, he was conveyed to West Dallas Memorial Hospital.
Just so the jury understands, he had apparently gone from where he said he was assaulted into this lawyer's office to get help or to summon an ambulance or police. Is that so?
Yes, I believe so.
I want these questions, as I ask you these questions, I want you to keep in mind all that you observed, both in the early morning hours of September 27, 1988, and in the afternoon hours of November 4, 1988. Okay?
Yes, sir.
During either of those two events, did he appear to you to be suffering from any delusions?
No, he did not.
Any hallucinations?
No, sir.
Any incoherence?
No, sir.
Was he able to understand your questions and appear to be responsive to them?
Yes, he was.
Did he appear to be able to relate one thought to another?
Yes, he did.
Did he appear to you to be at all to having racing thoughts?
No, he did not.
Did he strike you to be in a stupor?
No.
Apparently he was in pain on the 4th, but that was not a stupor.
He wasn't in a stupor. He was in pain and physically in need of attention from a doctor, a medical doctor.
Did he appear to you at any time on either of those occasions to be out of touch with reality?
No, he did not.
Keeping in mind, then, all that you saw him, the observations you made of him on both those days, on his actions, on what he said, and in what he did you form an opinion as to his condition, his mental condition?
He appeared to be a normal person to me.
That's all.
Cross-examination.
Well, is this just a couple of months after the sexual assault case?
It's approximately 5 to 6 weeks in that area, sir.
After that?
That the battery happened?
Yeah.
Yes.
And did he tell you how he was battered?
Told me he was beat up on the street. He couldn't describe the persons or couldn't tell me exactly what happened.
And how far was he from the place where he had lived when you went over and searched the house with the Lieutenant Shaefer? How close were they in proximity to each other?
When the battery occurred?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the battery occurred in the 2400 block of West Wells. His old apartment was at 808 North 24th Street, so that's real close proximity.
Couple blocks?
Not even. The building's right on the northeast corner of 24th and Wells, so 24th to 25th would be 2400 West Wells.
What time of the day or night was it?
In November, it was approximately 5:40 that I got sent. He said it happened around 5 o'clock
5 o'clock what, night, PM or AM?
p.m.
Was he under the influence of an intoxicant?
He had been drinking.
Well, was he under the influence?
I don't think he was legally drunk. I didn't have him take a breathalyzer, but I don't think he was legally drunk.
And did you know at that time what the status of the sexual assault case was?
No, I didn't.
That's all.
No question.
You may step down, sir. This time we'll break for the evening. As we previously discussed, we will reconvene tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Court's in recess.